Alright, today I'm going to be making a Slimline pen. It's actually for one of the groomsmen in my wedding. I thought that would be a good thing to do for their gift, would be to build them all a pen. So I asked them if they'd like a thin one, thick one, what color they were wanting. So I got the order in from the distributor, the pen distributor. I decided I would use olive wood. This is actually, it smells like olives, and it's from Bethlehem. And so I think it'll make a really cool pen. I've never made one with it before, so we'll see how it goes. This is a thin line pen. And the first thing you want to do is get your brass tubes here, the little inserts. You're going to set it on the wood here and just kind of get a rough estimate of where it's at. And then obviously I have enough for the other tube. So next I'm going to go out to my chop saw and just cut this piece of wood here so that it's closer to the overall length that I want it to be. Alright, now that I've got those cut to the right size, you can see they're both going to fit on there. The next thing I want to do here is sand these tubes. When you go to mill them with a pen mill, is what I found to be the easiest way. If you don't have these things glued in, they're going to come right back out. And I use some CA glue to keep them in there. It dries relatively quick. And gives a good hold, but you have to sand these things in order for the glue to actually grab onto something. So, in my opinion, that's about the quickest way to have a bad day in pen making. So, go ahead and just kind of get a rough sanding on that. However you see the best way to do it. This is a 220 grit sandpaper, and so it'll scuff that finish up and give the glue something to grab onto. Alright, so you can see that one's pretty scuffed up there. The same thing for the other tube. Alright, so that looks pretty good there. Get a little bit more on this one. Okay, so now that those are all sanded, the next thing we can do is drill through the middle of these pen blanks here to put the tube in. I would recommend using a drill press. I do not have a drill press, so I have to do it by hand, which can be kind of difficult because if you don't drill directly through the center and you come out the side, you've ruined your piece of wood at that point. You can't use it anymore. And for instance, this olive wood I ordered online, so I can't just go out back and get another piece. So you want to really make sure you do a good job and drill through those straight. Okay, now the other thing I've taken and done here is used a square and put an X through the center there, so I kind of know where I'm going on both of these. Because you want to go through the center of this. So just kind of clamp it in a vise if you're going to drill it by hand, which I don't recommend, but I don't have a drill press, so I don't really have much choice. You're going to line your drill bit up right in the center there. You're going to drill right down through the center. Okay, there's the first one. As you can see, drilling it by hand isn't always the best. I didn't come out directly through the center, but luckily the bushings I'm going to use for this pen aren't really that thick, so it's not really going to hurt this piece too bad. But if you're drilling with like a 10mm bit, this is a 7, that could make a world of difference, and your bushing might actually be bigger than that hole, so just want to be careful with that. I'm going to go ahead and drill this next one, and then go back inside and put the tubes in. Alright, now that we've got our holes drilled, And we've sanded these tubes. Make sure you do that again. That'll get you off to a really rough start, because if you ruin these tubes, then you got to go buy more, and chances are you might not have extras laying around, so it could just really be wasting your time. But I'm using CA glue, the thick one. There's a couple different types out there. Actually, there's a lot of different types, but I'm using the thick one. You're just going to put a little bit down in here. Make sure you're not going to be getting the whole tube covered, or the entire hole, but you just want to get enough in there on both sides that are going to hold that. This glue does dry really hard, and it doesn't take too long to start setting up, so you really want to make sure that you work efficiently to get these in there, and try not to get the glue on your hands, otherwise it kind of dries, I would say, like as hard as plastic, and it's tough to get off your fingers, so just be careful with that. Got one glued up, and then we'll glue the next one here. Alright, there we go. Okay, let's get our other tube, put that in there. You don't have to get the tubes lined up completely in the center, but you want them to be somewhat close to in the center of the thing that the hole that you just drilled. You don't want the tube to be sticking out to the end, so once you get that done, you can just leave it sit. I'm not exactly sure how long this would take to dry if you're looking to just keep going, but I would give these things probably at least 30 minutes anyway to dry, since you're using the thick CA glue. If you're using something thinner, it obviously won't take as long, but I'm going to leave mine dry for a while. I'm going to go work on something else, and I'll be back in a little while to finish the rest of them. Alright, so now that we've got those brass tubes glued in with the CA glue, and they've set up and they've had time to dry, the next thing we're going to do is I use a pen mill to mill these out, because in order for the pen to fit together nicely, you want the little tubes to be flush at 90 degrees with the piece of wood. So what I'm going to do is just clamp it down in here. I'm going to mill these out. And this is another reason why when you were sanding it, this is where it can give you a rough time, because if you didn't sand these and the glue didn't have anything to secure to on the tube, these could come out. So hopefully that doesn't happen since we sanded them. Okay, so you're going to keep going down on the mill until you can see the shiny brass where the glue has been cleared out is just to the edge of that wood. So you're going to do that on both sides, on both of the blanks. So I got 3 more here to do, and then we're going to put it on the lathe here and start turning. Okay, now that we've got those milled out, we're going to go ahead and slide the blanks on the mandrel. Again, this is a 7mm Slimline ballpoint pen, so you're going to want to use the bushings that fit that. So as you can see, I've got 2 of them on there right now. So you're going to go ahead and slide your blanks on there. And then, depending on how big your mandrel is, you can put a couple bushings in between. I usually put 2 on one end, 2 in the middle, and then 2 on the far end. And get them on there. Take your little brass, I guess you'd call it a nut here, and then you're going to tighten that on, and it's going to snug those bushings up on these pieces of wood and hold them into place for while you're turning. Alright, bring your stock down there. Give it just a little turn. You don't want to tighten it too much, because you can bend the mandrel, and then you have to buy another one. So if you want to save some money, don't bend your mandrels. Once you get that all set up, you're going to take your tool rest and put it just below halfway on the wood. So if you look at it, you want to have it lined up just below half is where I usually put mine. You want to get it up pretty close because initially these are it's gonna kind of chatter on your when you're using your roughing gouge. Now, if you have a lathe like mine, you have to manually adjust the belt so that you can change the speed. So you want to unplug it and go in here and manually adjust it. You're going to want to go with probably the lowest speed that you have. Then you can close it back up there. Then you're ready to turn. So you want to put on your safety glasses. Some people wear a full mask. I don't usually, unless I'm going to like turn a bowl or something. I'd probably just use safety glasses. I haven't had much trouble with that. Then you're going to turn it on. You're just going to start going from one side to the other. You just want to turn this, start rounding it out. As you can see, it's kind of bouncing a little bit, so you want to hold your chisel close to the tool rest. You want to hold it tight down on there, and you're not trying to take off a whole bunch at one time, otherwise you can get your chisel caught in there and it'll lock up. So you just want to do a little bit at a time here initially until you get it pretty much rounded. Alright, so as you can see, these are starting to get relatively round. So what I'm going to do is, since I have the lathe that you have to manually adjust the speed, I'm going to go ahead and move the belt up to the next fastest speed. You're still going relatively slow, but since they're round, it's not going to chatter as much, and so I can take more material off. So I'm not spending the entire day on this one pin. Alright, as you can see, those are pretty much all the way rounded out. So the next thing I'm going to do is take use my roughing gouge and bring the edges of each of these down just about a few thousandths of an inch from the bushing. And then I'll sand it all the way down to the bushing when I get to that point. Alright, I'm going to do that with that side. This side I'm going to do something a little bit different. Instead of it being just the exact same as this one here, I want to put like a little grip on here to make it more comfortable to write with. Basically how pens work is when you take these blanks, the pen blanks, all the way down to the bushing, it's going to fit nicely. And once you do that, you can really do whatever you want in between the two bushings. So if you want to leave it thick like this, if you want to make different shapes with your different gouges, you can do that. And I'm going to kind of demonstrate that on this one with some different gouges. Actually, just one other gouge. I'll use the roughing gouge, and then I'm going to use the spindle gouge. So you'll kind of see what I'm talking about here. Believe it or not, this wood, like I said earlier in part of this video, I've never worked with olive wood before, but it actually does smell like olives. So, in case you were wondering, yes, it does smell like olives. So now I'm going to use a spindle gouge and kind of take this one down to the bushing, but I'm going to make a little grip, so you'll kind of see what that looks like here in a minute. Alright, so you can see, this is the rough kind of outline of what it'll be. Now I'm going to go back and take out some more bulk of this material with the roughing gouge. I use the spindle gouge just to get it pretty precise in some of these smaller areas. Then you want to go back to your roughing gouge to take out more bulk material. Alright, now you got a pretty good idea of what I was talking about. So now you're just going to sand this down and get it to where you want it to be, smoothness wise, so you can, as you can see, my finger's kind of catching on this bushing or where the wood hits, so you want to sand it down past that. Next thing you want to do is take your lathe and adjust the speed up to, you don't have to go all the way to the highest speed, but you're going to want it to go to pretty quick moving speed. On this lathe, I have, let's see, 6 different speeds. This is the second from the fastest speed. I'm using a 150 grit sandpaper that's been used, so it's not going to have quite the roughness of a normal 150 grit. You're just going to sand this down so that these bushings go right onto the pen. There's a small little lip right there that we're going to sand off. Okay, as you can see, those bushings come right onto the piece of wood. So at this point, I'm going to go to basically through 5 different grits of sandpaper, starting with 150. I'm going to go all the way up to 600, and from there, I'm going to use some mineral spirits to get all the dust off, and then we're going to start putting our finish on. One thing that's good to do also is kind of look after each time after you use a grit. As you can see, there's some little lines from where the sandpaper has kind of eaten in a little bit too far, so you just want to keep going with that same grit until you can sand all those out. Not a bad idea once you start getting into some of these lighter grits in between sandings to just kind of run your finger down it and kind of take off any of the grit that might have taken on there, so that way you don't transfer it to your next piece of sandpaper. Alright, that one was 320. Now we're going to go with 400. Alright, after 400, you're going to go with 600, and that'll be the last one we'll do for right now. Alright, now the next thing I usually do is get a little bit of mineral spirit on a rag. You're just going to want to clean up the surface of that wood before you start putting your finishes on there. And the mineral spirits will also give you a pretty good idea of what color the wood is going to be when you're done with your finish. So as you can see, there it is. Now the next thing I'm going to do, switch my speed back down to the low speed, and then we're going to start going over how to put a good finish on your pens. Okay, now that the mineral spirits is dried, you can see, just kind of give it a once over and look at it and make sure that you know, you've got it sanded good. You don't have sand grooves in there from where the sandpaper dug too deep. The next thing I do is use a little bit of CA glue. Your pens more than likely are going to come in little Ziploc baggies, which most people just throw away, and I do the same thing too, but I just use them for a different purpose first. You're going to turn on your lathe at a low speed, then you're just going to put just a little bit of CA glue on here and rub it across. Alright, get it on there. You're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay. Just get a little bit more. Oops. There we go. There you go. Just get it back and forth. Just make sure you cover the entire piece of wood. Once you get it on there, you're probably going to want to take a step back from your lathe for a little while, because the CA glue, if you breathe it in, it kind of clears out your sinuses and burns your eyes and stuff, so you don't want to stick around too long. I'll just say a couple more things. You don't want to put too much CA glue on, otherwise it's going to start dripping down, and when it dries like a hard plastic, as I said earlier, so you're just going to have to sand it a whole bunch to get that off. So I'm just going to leave this sit for a few minutes, and then come back and we'll take a look at it and see if we need to do more coats with the CA glue, or if we can go right to our friction polish. Okay, now that the CA glue is dried, you can see that it's very smooth. It almost has like a glass-like finish, and it's actually only sanded up to 600 grit. So what we're going to do now is sand it to 800 grit. You can put it up to, again, I'm second from the highest speed on this. This is with an 800 grit sandpaper. Just going to lightly sand over that, just so we get a nice even finish every time. Sand the other side. Alright, once we've done that, you can see it's kind of took away some of the shine. We're going to use a little mineral spirits on a cloth, just clean that up a little bit. That way our friction polish is going to get the best. It's going to stick on there the best without any dust or anything holding it in the way. What I use is Mylan's friction polish. I put it in a little bottle here. It comes in a bigger bottle, but I like to use one that has like a little squirt lid, so that I can put it onto a cloth. So what I'm going to do is I usually use like a piece of t-shirt type material, like this here. You're going to shake up the Mylan's really good, because it does, all the liquids inside will separate. So you're going to shake that up good. And you're just going to get just a little dab on there. While the lathe is off, just kind of manually turn it and put it on there like that. And you're going to do the same thing with the other side. Get a little bit more. Okay. Just get it all on there. And what I do, I leave it sit for just a couple seconds here and kind of let that soak in. I'm going to put just a little bit more on my cloth. Let that soak in. Again, I'm at a high speed here. This is friction polish. So what you're going to do is you're going to go back and forth on here relatively fast on both of these. And then towards the end, I'm going to kind of do one slower pass all the way through both sides, or both ways, just to clean it up nice. You're going to see this, I think, maybe the lighting's terrible, I don't know. But it's kind of dull right now, and this is going to bring it up to a really nice shine. Just kind of go back and forth, like this here. Just switch to the other one. Put that back and forth. Sometimes when you make these little grooves, like for the grips and stuff, you kind of got to go slow over them just to make sure you're getting all the spots. I don't know if you can tell or not, but it's definitely brought a nice shine to this pen. So after I've done that, I'm just going to take one pass all the way over, both sides, and back the other direction. Okay. Now, also with friction polish, one thing you want to make sure you do is, because it has to be at a high speed in order for the friction polish to work, but as you can see, there's instantly the finish is on there. You're ready to take it off at that point if you want, to assemble the pen and put it together. But what I like to do, that was sanded to 800 grit. I'm going to sand it right now to 1,000, and then I have the micro mesh pads, and I'm going to sand that. They start at 1,500, and I'm going to go all the way up through 12,000. So that's what I'll do here next. So next I'm going to sand it with a 1,000 grit, and then go again, like I said, up all the way through 12,000 with the micro mesh pads. Just going to sand it lightly with these. You don't have to push real hard. Again, it's not a bad idea to just run your finger across and take any of the grit that was on there. Take that off with your hand. So next, the micro mesh pads go from, like I said, 1,500 to 12,000. I'm just going to run up through those. You don't have to push hard at all with these in order for them to work. They're aluminum oxide, so basically they won't lose their grit throughout the entire life of them. The grit will, eventually the pad will just wear out and you have to get new pads. Alright, this one here is the 12,000. Okay, now at this point I could just take it off the lathe and assemble it, clean it up a little bit with some mineral spirits. But what I'm going to do is clean it up with the mineral spirits, but then I'm actually going to do one more coat of the friction polish. So just clean it up here, like that. One other thing I forgot to say with the friction polish is that you're going to want to push hard enough to the point where your fingers are going to start getting pretty hot. Obviously you don't want to burn your finger, but you need to be pushing hard enough to where you're feeling the heat in order for this to apply on there correctly. So again, just put a little dab, run it across there, another little dab, the other one, okay. Alright, and then we're ready to go. Okay, now we're all set. We can go ahead and take this off the lathe and we're ready to assemble it. Alright, so after you've taken your pen off the lathe, you can set it out there and then pull apart or get all the pieces, I guess, to your kit. Set them out in front of you. Some of these will come with directions, some of them won't. After you put together enough of them, you'll kind of get the idea of how they're put together, and maybe you won't need the directions after a while. A lot of these come in the little annoying bags, which again, like I said earlier, you can save for when you apply your CA glue, because they make great things to apply it with. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the nib, which is like the tip, and I usually just glue that into place, because that's one piece that can pop off because the spring will push against that. So just put a little glue in there, and it sets up fast, so you want to move relatively quick. Okay, you can buy big machines and apparatuses that do this, essentially the same thing when you're putting these together, but I usually just use a clamp because, well, this clamp I got on sale for like $4 in those machines and presses. I'm not exactly sure how much they cost, but I imagine they're not $4. So once you do that, you can go ahead and you're going to put the twisting mechanism in there, the twist holder, and it does have a little line right here that is your indentation marker. So you're going to push this in all the way to that line. Okay, so once you get it on there, you can go ahead again. You don't have to glue this part, because more than likely it won't come apart. You're just going to go all the way up to that little line, and don't go too far, otherwise the pen won't come out far enough. After that, you're going to take your little ink cartridge here, put it in, you can twist it down. This is a good time to test it. As you can see, you're going to want the tip of the pen to come out just about that far, so that it comes out far enough. But when you twist it all the way back in, you want it to be in all the way so that, you know, when it's twisted in, it's not going to be getting on people's pockets if they put them in their pockets. So once you do that, you can push together the other end. The finish on this pen is rhodium, which is supposedly a really hard finish that makes it so it won't tarnish and it won't get scratches on it. So you're going to push the cap together over the little clip, and that's going to go on the other blank of the barrel there. So again, you're going to take that. Sometimes you might have to bend this out a little bit so it doesn't scratch the pen. You're going to put it together the cheap way, as I do with this, $4 way, or you can buy that machine. So you push it together like that. After that, you've got your center band. That's just going to slip right over the twist mechanism here and go on there. You're going to line up your wood grain if you care. You should if you took all this time to put the pen in together. Just going to find the grain that lines up, and then you can just push it all together like that. And there you have your pen. You want to practice, you can make sure it works before you sell it to somebody or give it to somebody, as I'm going to do. So again, this is a Slimline pen made with olive wood.